Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. What a couple of tough acts to follow, but I'll do the best I can. Before I get into the budget and get into the numbers, I want to recognize what's really, really critical and important, and that's the team the management team I get to work with. And I'll start with Dave Lee. Dave came to us in September of 2010. We share him with East Lansing. He's been with us for about 9 years. Chris Buck came to us in October of 17, so he's been here coming up on 2 years. And Maria Madison, our finance director, came to us in April of 16, so she's been with us for 3 years, her third budget. And Joyce Barks, our HR director, whether you consider the part-time or the full-time, but full-time August of 2014, so she's been with us for 5 years. And Chief Hamill came to us in July of last year, so he has just over 1 year of service. Peter Menser, who's our principal planner, came to us in October of 2006, so he's been with us for about 13 years. Stephen Gabus, January of 92, so he has about 27 years of service with the township. And Mr. Perry, our deputy, came to us in March of 15, so he has about 4 years of service. And of course, Mark Kieselbach, January of 1980. So just in a few months, he'll celebrate his 40th year of service to the township. Director Luann Maisner came to us in October of 99. And so she is just 1 month short of her 20th anniversary with the township. And Director Deborah Guthrie from Communications has been with us 21 years. And came to us in April of 98, I believe, for 21 years of service. I was expecting the chief, but he left to go celebrate with his family. Chief, in just a few days, 3 or 4 days, will celebrate on the 6th of September, 24 years of service to the township. And Sergeant McCready, I wasn't expecting to be here, but from memory, I think it's February of 2000. I believe. So yeah, coming up on, 19 years of service, coming up on 20. So thank you for being here. And Riley, yeah. So we're also very glad that you're with us as well. So it's about a year and 3 or 4 months, I believe, for Riley. So with that, I'd like to go through the budget, but I'm very proud of the 157 years of service that's before you. We have a great team, and I'm proud to get to work with them. So getting into the budget, the 2019 action plan that was developed by the board. And what did the board say that we wanted to do in the coming year? And that's to expand the Ready Ride service and redevelop our PICA areas, relocate the farmers market, do something globally with our local road funding, expand our pathway system with the boardwalk and Okemos Road, and strengthen the mall. What are the core 5 budget goals for 2020? That's to continue to eliminate our MERS pension debt. I'll talk quite a bit about that this evening. Redevelop our core PICA areas, including Hazlet and Okemos. Fix our roads. I think we can hit 15 to 17 miles a year. That's between preservation and reconstruction, resurfacing. We are going to open up our farmers market hopefully by June of 2020. And we really need to replace our municipal HVAC. Those are the key areas of the 2020 budget. Starting out with pension and eliminating our debt, and I know we've talked a lot about this over the last 2 years, and let's see where we're at. Our funding level went, as you know, from 64 to 63%, from 18 to 19. As you can see, Public Works dropped a couple points, and Police Patrol dropped 5 points, and so on. State averages dropped from 76 to 75, and we're in the low 60s. But keep in mind, that may sound bad, but really it's kind of like an all-time high for where we're at in the township. It would be over 20 years before we'd go back to where we were in the 60%. So we've been hovering in the mid-50s for a long time. If the market stays strong, we're fully expecting to hit 70% in 2020. If you look at the actual report that all of you had a copy of, and you look at the most important page in there, that talks about what do you need to do to get to 100% funding. And this is a key, because we all said we were going to do a lot of things when the pension tax was approved in 2017. We said we're going to pay this, we're going to pay that. We're not. I remember Citizen Bowlby asking the question, are you going to lower your payments once you get this? to artificially support your general fund. We said, no, we're going to pay the higher amount. This is a quote from the actual report, that we would need to make monthly contributions of $327 instead of what we're required to pay. We're required to pay $214,000 per year. Big difference. So here's the contributions that are in the pension. $750 for police, $750 for fire, the actual required payment of $2.5 million for a total contribution of $4,075,000. That's what we're paying into the pension fund in 2020. If you look at the last page and transpose that over to here, what's the required annual payment for 100% funding? Well, it's the 327 times 12. We're required to pay $3.93 million to get to 100% funding. We're taking the very high number in the MERS actuarial report. We're meeting that obligation. Downtown Okemos demolition, development of our PICA areas has begun. We appreciate the work that Director Buck has given towards or provided to our economic development over the last 2 years. We developed our PICAs, and here's the things that we accomplished this year in getting to do that. Probably the biggest is the work not only by Mr. Buck, a couple of board members, Trustee Opsimer, Trustee DeShane, Supervisor Steiker, very much involved in working with our local government. It's all about relationships, right? And we use those relationships to acquire our TIF funding from our neighbors for the redevelopment of downtown Okemos. Fixing our roads. So we now have our $3.5 million. One of the questions that came up in every session we were in, all 27 of them, came up every time, what will the $3.5 million be used for? And there was two things that people were concerned about. We wouldn't spend every dollar on roads, and that we would take administrative cost out of that. Well, we're actually proposing that we not only put $3.5 million in roads, but we fund additionally $427,000 out of local roads. Now, that's not all out of the general fund. Keep in mind, 172 of that comes from the county. And then there's a little interest money. The contribution that's requested through the general fund for local roads is $250,000, $250,000. What will that do to our local road funding for this year? Our local road funding then would jump from 3.5 to 3.9 million and change. We would actually fund roads at 3.9 million. And you can see how that graph correlates or compares to the previous 4 years. And so we would be spending almost $4 million on roads. 3.5 for the millage, 172,000 from the county, and 250 plus $5,000, if you get right down to it, $5,000 in interest. And here's a graph that shows where that money would actually go. The $3.5 million would go towards fixing the worst roads. They would be trying to fix our 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then the 427 would go to preserving the 7, 8, 9s, and 10s so they don't deteriorate and get us into a position where we find ourselves in 2019. It's really incumbent upon us to not just go throw all this money at the bad roads, which we're going to throw 100% of our bond at, but to also find a way to fund preserving our roads as well. Tax base, something that we talk about quite a bit, and our tax base in 2019, according to Assessor Lee, is $1.8 billion. It's worth noting that that is higher than the combined tax base of the City of East Lansing and Delhi Township combined. So we're pretty proud of our tax base and where it continues to head. On the left-hand column there is some of the accomplishments or developments in this past year. Communications. Our communications budget is hovering around $700,000. And when we take a look at that over the last couple of years, and we take a look at what other communities are doing to provide this service, and you take a look at wants versus needs, and we take a look at what we should or can and should be doing as a community, is that really where we should be spending $700,000? What are our core services in communications? Well, it's the management of the website, marketing, social media, televising our meetings, and our intern program. We're committed to continue those. I don't want you to think that if this budget's approved and we reduce our staff from 6 to 3, I don't want you to think for 1 minute that we're going to completely dissolve half of our department about the functions that we provide. Now, we won't have 20 interns anymore. We'll have an intern program of 5 or 6. We won't be doing maybe 300 programs a year. We might be doing 150 or 120. We will be televising all the same meetings, but we will be doing things a little differently as we go forward. There's a number of things that have to happen for this to come to fruition. And I make no bones about it. It's transparent as can be. It's included in the budget message for anyone to read. It includes a severance agreement for our director. Having Director Guthrie leave us would leave a huge void. I'll be the first one to tell you that. We've sat down and talked about this, and both agree that it's in the best interest of everyone involved. But we've got to make sure that we have a fair proposal for Ms. Guthrie that we offer her in a severance agreement. But that is part of this reduction. Parks and Recreation. You know, if you take a look at our park system, it's very, very strong, and Director Maisner and her team have continued to provide 29 outstanding parks for our residents. We really want to see the farmers market open in May. It's a tall task. I know that we're really laser focused on that. And then you can see some of the other things, the dog park and the shade structure for pickleball and other things that will occur in 2020. The police department, probably the most important thing that the department's doing besides maintaining their 41 officers, a couple radar signs, is we have the funds set aside, not in the general fund, but drug forfeiture money to purchase a new K-9 unit. So you notice the name of the K-9 is Chief Viking. That was supposed to be something for Chief Plaga to see and say, you can't name the dog, I know all that. But anyway, you can tell him that was up there. It was supposed to be something for him to see, but he's not here, so the whole thing's ruined at this point. And some upgrades to the Nelson room planned as well. Fire department, again, we're committed to getting our emergency sirens throughout the township. We had 6 in 2013. If this budget's approved, we'll have number 9. We'll have 3 additions just in the last 6 years. What's critical up here is that $250,000. Again, we made promises to our taxpayers. We said if you fund this August 2017, in 4 years we're going to have $1 million and we're going to purchase a new ladder truck. Our ladder truck, I think, is $19.99 if I recall. And Chief Hamill continues to remind me, this is what we need to do. Director Madison, tell you what, if you talk about someone who knows her job, keeps promises, knows where the money's at, that's her. She does a fantastic job at this. If this budget's approved, it's the 3rd payment, 17, 18, 19, or 18, 19, 20, because we levied in 17. We'll have $750 set aside, and in 2021, we'll accomplish our goal. We'll purchase the ladder truck. Motor pool. Pickup trucks, dump truck, police vehicles, pretty much looks like it's looked before. $422,000 worth of expenditures. What does that do to our motor pool? Every year you see this slide, we'll have $422,000 in expenditures, our cash balance, and you can see that line, I think it's purple, but you can see it projecting up like a great economy. Unfortunately, I like to say that's great planning and good management. It's really not. It's just the $750,000 that's set aside for the fire truck. That's part of that $1.1 million. So we have about $300 and some thousand set aside separate from the ladder truck. General fund capital projects. Here's something that's really amazing. If you don't look at anything else in this budget, think about how we've talked about our failing HVAC system in this building. It's so bad, it's so costly that we even looked at, well, I guess I looked at, moving away from this building. And the board said, no, this is where we're going to stay. We don't like your idea. We're going to stay here and we're going to fix our building. So that's what's in the budget. But we also talked about if you're going to do this, if you recall those conversations, and I think it was with this board, we said we're going to need to take an installment purchase contract out on the HVAC system, which might make some of you happy, would make us happy for borrowing the money. So we're going to need to take out like $220 to $250 a year interest cost to pay the $2.2 million. The entire $2.2 million is included in this budget, in the general fund. We will pay for this HVAC system in 1 year with cash. Also, we'll improve our break rooms and fix some windows around it. There are some bigger ticket items, if you're doing $2.2 million on an HVAC, there's not much left. And we'll replace a driveway at the South Fire Station. Water and sewer funds. We're maintaining our solid balances there that we need to keep. The water rates are recommended to go up by 4%, the sewer rates by 8%, for a total of a 6% jump in water and sewer rates. And what does that mean as a comparison? Well, here's some of the projects that we'll be doing in water and sewer. Nothing, again, finishing some or completing some of our SAW grant projects. Nothing really earth-shattering to talk about there. Continuation of those projects. But here's the rates. And this is a slide that's really important. If you can see, the proposed rate increase would get us to, if I can see that, it's about 137.83, if I can read that from here. And it would maintain, this is where the increase. That increase maintains us at the lowest. If you compare us to all the other communities in the region, we're still by far the lowest water and sewer cost. And what does that really mean to the average user when you talk about an 8% and a 4% increase combined of 6? What it really means is that the average 12,500 gallon per quarter water user will see a $2 a quarter increase. So this is going to cost our residents approximately, for the average user, about $8 a year. The most important part of the budget for me personally, I think it's really important when a local government makes promises to a community and says, trust us. If you give us this money, this is where we'll spend it. I'd like to go through real quickly the promises that we've all made, because you were all on this board in 2017, and they're as follows. We said we'd hire 2 new police officers and get to 41. We're not at 41. We're budgeted at 41. And we want to get to 41, but recruitment's quite an issue for departments across the state. In fact, we're looking at another program that we use with the Coles and diversity and paying for the academy. We're looking at another diversity hire going in that direction. That's how competitive the hiring is right now for police. But we said we'd budget for 41. We've budgeted for 41. We've said we'd budget for 32 in the fire department. We've budgeted for 32. We said we'd contribute $1.5 million for police and fire pensions per year. It's in the budget. We said we'd set aside $250,000 per year for the fire truck. It's in the budget. What are promises we made in 2019 when we did the road millage or road bond? We said 100% of the local road millage would be to fix our roads and no administrative cost. That's what's in the budget. We said we continue to contribute to preserve our high quality of roads, to maintain our higher ratings. We aren't just going to take the $3.5 million and spread it over all roads. We're going to put the $3.5 million into reconstruction and resurfacing, and take the money of the $250, the $172, and the $5,000, the $422, and put that into preserving the roads that are 7 through 10, so they don't end up 5 or 6s next year. And we said we're going to go to Ingham County and we're going to ask for the ability to take over and manage our own program, because one of the issues, a couple of the issues that were brought up at our 27 neighborhood meetings is that who's going to oversee this program? Who's going to be responsible? Who's going to answer when the resurfacing isn't done correctly? And we said we're going to go to Ingham County and we're going to ask to take over our own program. They've agreed to allow us to do that. And we said that we're going to provide on-site township staffing during all local road constructions. Right now, we don't have people. We will rely on other people, other jurisdictions, to go out and manage the road projects as they occur. Not anymore. In the budget, we have set aside funding for a new engineer whose plan is, he or she, to take over all inspections of roads and all issues dealing with right-of-way. Right now, Ms. Guthrie has the task, a task that nobody wants, and that's for the Metro X, the right-of-way, and all that stuff that goes through her office, that she's dealing with all the telecom companies. The new engineer that's in this budget will be dealing with all right-of-way issues and all those issues, projects that Ms. Guthrie was dealing with, and will also inspect all roads. That position is included in this budget. Here's the staffing changes, and there's more here than I've ever brought to the board before during my time here. We will eliminate the position of director and administrative assistant, content specialist, and a freelance journalist. those positions would be eliminated. We'll eliminate the position of an administrative assistant upstairs in the engineering department. That position currently is vacant. It's not an elimination of anyone's job. The accounting and budget department will pick up one through a purchasing coordinator. And I will tell you that if you haven't watched the documentary, and I know a number of you have, I think the supervisor, I think the clerk, Trustee Jackson, Treasurer DeShane, I think we're able to attend a showing of all the Queen's horses. If you haven't seen all the Queen's horses in that documentary, you really, really need to see that. It's about the largest embezzlement in the history of the United States that took place over 20 years in Dixon, Illinois. It's really, really well done, and every local governmental official should see it. We've all seen it. And one of the things that I thought about, how can you tighten up your not that we're doing anything wrong, not that I suspect any embezzlement, but you always have to do things to tighten things up. And the idea didn't come from me. The idea came from Director Madison. Why don't we get a purchasing coordinator? Because right now, 20 people are overseeing what we purchase and our bid documents, and it's really a la carte when it comes to our purchasing policy. This new position that's included in the budget will oversee every contract that goes out of this township. One person will be responsible for those. I urge you to see all the Queen's horses. Street and highways, I've already talked about. We'll add the engineering position, again, for the road bond. Again, I want to reiterate, this position is not funded out of the bond. This position is funded out of the general fund. When you make a promise to the residents, you keep it. There will be no staff or administrative costs out of the bond. I can't say that enough. It's critical. Information technology two system administrator positions that are open. We took those two positions, combined them into an assistant director of IT, and it's been a long road and a long process to filling that position. And just today, we extended an offer, Director Marks and Director Givas extended an offer to a gentleman who's going to join us on September 23rd. He's very talented. Overall, 2019, 167 full-time, 164 in 2020, projected savings of almost $200,000 in staffing, and we get someone in here who's strong on the financial end to assist our director, Madison, and we get someone in here to oversee all of our road operations. And yet we spend less money. A summary, special appropriations, things that the board may wish to take a hard look at, the $250,000 for local roads, the $400,000 for the farmers market. That's the same allocation or appropriation that was there last year. It just wasn't spent this year due to the project stalling a little bit. The $700,000 for the Meridian Redevelopment Fund, $2.2 million to fix our HVAC, $20,000 for employee break rooms. $54,000 for the annual payment to the pension fund. And I want to call your attention to this. If you have your budgets in front of you, if you could turn to page 126. This goes to the heart of this budget, and this goes to the heart of the fiscal management of this township. If you look at there's a 200 and, well, let's go to this page here. The $54,000 official or additional payment to the pension system. If you look on page 126, it describes how much we're paying into the pension system. And we're paying an additional $54,000 in there. I don't have the budget in front of me that has the exact number in there, but I believe it's $200 and some thousand into the pension on page 126. We're paying $54,000 higher than what we're required. We're taking what's required to pay into our township pension fund, and we're paying $54,000. We're not just meeting our requirements, we're going way beyond our requirements. And also, on page 126, do you see the health insurance amount? $450,000. Our required contribution is $205,000. That's for retiree health care for police and fire. We are paying $245,000. We're paying more than 100% on top of what's required for our retiree health care. So when you take a look at this budget, We're not only meeting our obligations, we're going way beyond them. And I won't go over the rest of these because we've talked about the sirens and the additional payment to MERS and some of these other things that we're doing, the set aside for the truck. But I will go down to the general fund balance. Right here. So after all of this, after we meet all of our obligations, and in a lot of cases, we contribute funds beyond what's required, and we downsize the communications department, we move the communications budget over to the general fund, with the exception there is a contingency fund in communications that will stay separate, and there's approximately, I think, $250,000 to $300,000 in the fund balance. That will go to pay for the portion of that will go to pay for the severance package that's going to be discussed later on this evening. And there will still be some fund balance left at the end of that. And that next year will get moved over to the general fund. So we're keeping the cable commission, cable fund dollars separate, and then we'll move those, or the fund balance, and then we'll move that over at the end of the year. What is our fund balance after everything that I've just talked about? It's $6.1 million. It is 29% of our overall expenses. That doesn't take into account, it takes into account our one-time expenses. It takes into account the money for the HVAC, which is a one-time, the farmer's market, and others that are one-time expenses. If you back those out, we have a 29% fund balance. We have $6 million of approximately $20 or $21 million operating budget. And what's really interesting when you look at this, if you go back to 2015, for those of you that were here, look at your fund balance in 2015. $6,110,000. And you fast forward 5 years later, it's within $1,000 of what it was back in 2015. That's all I have for you this evening. I want to reiterate, I'm really thankful for the team that I have, and especially thankful for Director Madison and her work on the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, I don't know if this is the right time for questions because we're going to be having this on for discussion, so
Perfect.
maybe that's the better time.
Thank you.
Thank you.